With around 18 seasons finished, NCIS has featured quite a lot of unforgettable heroes, and it hasn't shied away from killing off its main characters. And what would lead heroes be without villains? NCIS is notorious for having some of the most vile and hideous villains that have turned their characters' lives upside down. In this video, we'll show you some of the worst villains that showed up on the popular crime drama. Starting off with two-faced Mira Sahar. We're beginning the list with the most recent villains that have entered the NCIS universe. One of them is Sahar, the woman who's part of a terrorist group, along with Ari Haswari, who was Zyva's half-brother. After Ari was killed at the hands of Zyva, the splinter group fell apart, and she vowed to avenge the death and kill Zyva. Mira ended up being taken as a prisoner of war and spent 11 years as a prisoner. She even had a baby boy with a male guard whom she soon lost as she was adopted by American parents. Once Sahar got out of prison, she kidnapped her boy, who was named Phineas, and all of this became her cover story she used to reach Zyva. What made Sahar stand out from other villains was how much trouble she caused the group. She first tricked them into killing an innocent woman who they thought was Sahar. Later on, she became Agent Gibbs' neighbor and appeared as a friendly woman with a young son named Phineas. The betrayal made Sahar an even more notorious villain and delivered a huge blow to the lead of the show, Agent Gibbs. On the surface, she appeared to be a devoted mother and a friendly neighbor, but in reality, she was an obsessive lunatic. Sahar eventually caused Zyva to fake her own death and then go into hiding. This caused the NCIS group to suffer a huge loss, as Zyva was a key member of their group. Moving on to the port-to-port killer who caused quite a stir, Jonas Cobb was the main villain of Season 8, and with good reason. His origin story was your classic hero turned into a monster narrative. Jonas was an ex-US sailor who was part of a CIA operation known as Frankenstein. In this operation, there was a behavior moderation program which trained people to remain calm in all kinds of situations, as they would be tasked with assassinations. But the program soon backfired as Cobb switched sides. At first, he was seen as the program's success since he completed the missions given to him by the CIA, but something inside him broke, and he disappeared. Afterwards, he emerged as a serial killer and ended up killing some of the most important NCIS members like Gain Levin and Michael Franks, whom he killed right in front of Agent Gibbs' house by stabbing him in the chest with a pocket knife. Franks was particularly heartbreaking because he had been a tough fellow fighting off multiple other villains in the series. He was also terminally ill, so his death was turned into a poignant part of the show as he went out fighting. Cobbs also kidnapped and tortured Zyva and James, but they were rescued by the NCIS team. He was eventually found in the same place where the Project Frankenstein was conducted, as he was attempting to brainwash other victims. Before he could fully do so, he was shot to death by Gibbs and Vance. Even as he died, he had a creepy smile on his face. Following up with the daughter following her father's footsteps, many of these baddies are just on a journey of avenging someone they loved. Revenge turns many into villains according to this series. Just like Sahar, Paloma Reynosa was also attempting to avenge her father's murder when she entered the NCIS storyline. Her father, Pedro Hernandez, was the man who killed Agent Gibbs' wife and daughter. He was later killed by Gibbs himself, and that's when she took charge of his drug cartel. She made her entry in Season 7 when she kidnapped Agent Gibbs on a trip to Mexico. To add to her twisted nature, she ordered Agent Gibbs to work on her drug cartel, or else she'd come after the rest of his family members. But Gibbs, being the hero, he escaped. Paloma didn't stop there, though. Staying true to her word, she attacked Gibbs' father, Jackson Gibbs. She went to his shop along with two of the men from her cartel, but Jackson Gibbs had his rifle ready and fought back. This is when Paloma realized that Gibbs' father was just like him and wasn't about to back down. Then the NCIS team set a trap for her and lured her back into a safe house where she thought Gibbs Gibbs and his father may be hiding. Coincidentally, Paloma's brother, Alejandro, also showed up at the safe house and accidentally shot Paloma thinking it was someone else. Paloma's death was still made uncertain, but in Season 10, it was confirmed that she was one of the villains killed by Gibbs. Let's take a look at La Grenouille. If revenge can push someone to the wrong side, it can also bring someone to become a hero in this show. Director Jenny Shepard believed the French weapons dealer La Grenouille, or the Frog, was the man responsible for her father's death, who was Colonel Jasper Shepard. While La Grenouille didn't really appear to have a violent nature, it was the mystery around him that made him into a very suspicious character and caused much of the trouble. He frequently showed up in several seasons of NCIS, but he finally met his end when he was killed in his yacht. His death also led the NCIS group to fight amongst themselves, which makes him the villain in a way. Just before his death, he had met up with Shepard and Gibbs, asking them to give him protection, as he believed the CIA agent Trent Court was not to be trusted. But Shepard refused to shield the man that she thought killed her father, so she let him go, and he was later killed by an unknown assassin. His daughter Janine accused Donoso of killing him. This caused a major split in the team. Shepard was temporarily suspended as the blame shifted on her as well, but Gibbs wasn't convinced. He kept investigating, and eventually it was confirmed that Trent had killed La Grenouille and that he was also responsible for Jenny's father's death. The whole thing was a huge mess, and that's why the Frog earned a spot in this list. Moving on to additional morally gray characters. By now, you'd understand that you can't really place these characters into boxes. Sometimes they're not heroes and neither are they villains. It's the acts they do that are either good or bad. A good example of such a villainous character from NCIS is Michelle Lee. Special Agent Lee first showed up in Season 4, but it was in Season 6 when she became a part of Gibbs' team. She was placed on his team because it was reported that someone was leaking information to the enemy, and she was the main suspect along with Langer and Keating. While they were on a mission, Lee shot Langer and presented him as the mole, claiming that she shot him in self-defense. But Vance and Gibbs soon learned of her true nature and set up a trap for her. The trap works, and during the interrogation, she explains that she committed espionage only because the enemies had kidnapped her daughter. They later found out that it wasn't really her daughter that was kidnapped, but her sister, whom she had raised herself when they lost their parents at a young age. Gibbs still chose to forgive Lee in return for helping him catch the real villain, who was Ted Bankston. But in an attempt to capture Bankston, Lee sacrifices herself. While Lee didn't intend to harm anyone, she still ended up causing a lot of death. Instead of coming clean to Gibbs, she chose to lie, and that's why she's on this list. Moving on to the one that started it all. The first time fans realized that the writers of the show weren't afraid to kill off any character was in Season 2, with the appearance of the season's main villain, Ari Haswari. In the season's finale, he killed the NCIS agent Caitlin Todd right in front of Gibbs and Donoso. If that wasn't enough to make you hate him, well, he was one persistent fellow. He showed up later in Gibbs's basement to kill him. In Season 3, his half-sister Zyva showed up in order to join the manhunt. During this scuffle, he also shot Abby and Gerald. This made Ari a truly terrifying villain, as no other villain has gotten so close to that many NCIS members. It was finally Zyva who shot him, but his death didn't put an end to scars he had left the NCIS members with. The trauma they were left with was covered in several seasons. His first victim, Caitlin Todd's sister, Rachel, was also shown grappling with her grief and visited the site where her sister was killed. All of this loss that persisted even after he was killed shows how impactful his legacy of evil was. Wrapping up with Harper Deering, perhaps no loss can push a man to the edge further than the loss of a child. That's what happened to Harper Deering, who was the main antagonist in Season 9 and much of Season 10 of the show. Harper was once a CEO of a major adventure company, but his life was derailed when his son was killed on a ship due to faulty wiring. His son's death also caused his divorce. That's what launched his reign of terror as he decided to avenge his son's death. He launched a series of attacks against the U.S. Navy and became the worst wanted terrorist in the U.S. In Season 9, NCIS made several attempts to capture him or lure him in one of their traps, but he kept seeing right through it all. In Season 10, they made another attempt to kill him by using bait, but that didn't work. Deering then tried to fake his own death by using his brother's body to prove it, but it was Gibbs who finally confronted him and killed him. That's a wrap for this video. Who do you think is the worst NCIS villain? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.